Okay, it looks like we are good to go. All right, so good morning slash afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another featured episode of Workforce Wednesday. We're really excited today. This has been a wonderful series in which we kind of take a behind the scenes look about the wonderful different kind of occupations out there here in the San Antonio market. Today, we're really excited to be joined by Margaret Grotte, which
Grotto. Yes.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Um, she represents an organization that I think we're all really excited to hear kind of how you got in there. Spurs Sports and Entertainment, which we have all heard. Of course, we know the Spurs, but we also want to make sure that you know it's a wide range from the Rampage to the actual like football club, and to also Silver and Black Give Back, which is such a phenomenal organization. If you haven't heard about that, just how in touch with the community this foundation actually is pretty phenomenal. So a couple of housekeeping that I'll go through before we actually dive into our conversation. Okay, Margaret?
Sounds good.
All right, so just a reminder, we are going to be using the chat box to collect our questions throughout the session. So students, attendees, if you have a question for Margaret that kind of pops into your head throughout our conversation, go ahead and enter it into the chat. Same thing with our Facebook viewers. Dr. Kurt will be going ahead and taking a look at the chat there, so he'll make sure that we get it back here in the Zoom session. Now, another thing is just as we kind of speak throughout the session, we're asking that if you are not speaking to go ahead and mute your mics, and that just helps us for feedback purposes. I think we've all noticed in Zoom settings, it gets really distracting if there's a lot of background noise in which we can't hear the conversation. And then finally, we are recording this session. Now, the nice thing, it will be instantly active on Facebook Live, but we'll also be posting it onto our Tamusa Mays YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. On that channel, you can also see the playlist of our other Workforce Wednesday sessions. So feel free to go ahead and check it out and again, kind of see the profiles of some really dynamic professionals that we've had throughout the semester. So let me go ahead and stop the screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get like deep dive into this, Margaret. So the first question I have for you is if you could tell us a little bit more about your educational and your, professional background.
Sure. I graduated from UT in Austin in 2012. So that's where I went to undergrad. I had no idea that working in sports was really a thing. So I actually started to major in nutrition, but I quickly realized I'm not a science buff that I thought I was. So I started to see if there are any other majors that interested me. And I was just looking on the list and saw sport management. And I was like, I played sports my whole life. Like, this sounds fun. So that's how I actually ended up with my major. It sounded fun. But through that, I actually realized that working in sports is an entire business. So there's tons of opportunities. And I think around then it was kind of an up and coming major. But now I feel like sport management is a very common major, and you can find it at many different colleges across the country. So that was kind of my educational background. So my senior year of college, I started trying to think of what I wanted to do when I graduated, and I had an internship the summer before with the soccer club in Dallas, FC Dallas, in the sponsorship department. And that's when I fell in love with like working in sports, and especially the sponsorship area. I was like, every day is different and you get to meet all these people. I'm obviously an extrovert. So that is kind of, I think, what drew me to it. So I knew I wanted to do that, but I had no ties to Austin or Texas, or, I was single and young. So I was like, I'll go anywhere in the world, even if it means that I can get my dream job of working in sports sponsorship. So my senior year, I started reaching out through LinkedIn to everybody I could find a connection with, brothers and in-laws of people who worked in sports, just to do some informational interviews and find out like what their story was and if they had any advice. And through that, it was a friend's brother who worked at the Spurs, and he was so gracious and let me interview him and talk to him. And he actually invited me down to shadow him for a game just to see what it was like. So I drove down to San Antonio, shadowed him to see what he did for the game, met his boss. Well, the boss and I struck up a conversation, and a few months later, there was an opening, and she actually reached out and interviewed me and hired me. So that goes to show you that connections, and yes, LinkedIn also, I mean, it can definitely make an impact. So she hired me right out of college, and I moved to San Antonio, and I was like, San Antonio, I don't know. I'm from Dallas. So I was like, I don't know about San Antonio. And I grew up a Mavs fan, but I was like, it's a job. It's my dream job. So I'll take it for a year, and then, I'll find the next thing. And almost 9 years later, I'm here. I absolutely love the city. I love the company. I love my job. So they hooked me.
That says a lot coming from a Mavs fan, not gonna lie.
Exactly.
That separates our family quite a bit. I'm not gonna it's conversation. I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving for that. So you had mentioned again networking, which yes, Dr. Kerr, LinkedIn, so powerful.
Hmm.
Now, in conversations that we've had recently with students, that's still an area that they're still trying to learn how to navigate. What advice would you have on how to pretty much start that conversation? I guess what tips and tricks, what kind of questions should they be asking?
I think LinkedIn has gotten even better in the last 10 years from when I started using it in college to find connections. But what I would do is I would go on there and search like any groups that I was a part of. So UT alumni, I was in a sorority. So I would go through and search my sorority, and then I would search connections. And you can search by industry, I think. So I think you can search by sports. Um, but I mean, I would just go down these rabbit holes of, okay, well, I have a connection in this company, or LinkedIn will tell you like if it's a second degree connection or third degree connection, and then you can see your. So it was a lot of stalking, but I mean, that's kind of what ended up happening. And so I would reach out kind of cold turkey to these people and be like, hey, I saw you're in my sorority and now you work for the Cowboys. Like, I'd love to get, I'd love to talk to you and see if you have any advice and kind of interview you to see what you do. And most of the time, they're very gracious. And I make sure and reciprocate that anytime somebody reaches out to me now, just because I know it was so helpful to me when I was a student.
Which listen up, students. Again, if you find Margaret on
I'm
LinkedIn,
happy to answer any questions.
right there. Now, in going and kind of looking at sponsorship, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do in sponsorship activation? And then also, what are some of the skills that are really highlighted on that? And how do you keep on having that moment of learning and keep on growing?
Sure. So our department is kind of split into three pillars. There's the sales side, which is the group that goes out and finds new companies to advertise with the Spurs. And when people ask what sponsorship at the Spurs is, the easy way to describe it is anytime you see a logo that has anything to do with the Spurs, that's our department. So, the AT&T logo when you walk into the stadium, or the um, HEB logos everywhere. So all those logos, that's our department. So we have the sales group that goes out and finds new partners. And then once it's sold, they kind of turn it over to our group, which is the activation side. And we are in charge of the day-to-day fulfillment of the contract. We build the relationships, we help renew the contracts. So we're really the relationship. I mean, they're all relationships, but we're the relationship building um, day-to-day contact for all of those companies. And then the third pillar is our strategy area, and they do research and graphics and design, and they support both sides. So we have a great group. I know you asked a few questions in there. Did I get to
You
all of
did.
them? Okay.
Now, you mentioned relationships. So how do you kind of keep on investing in that skill? Because again, it is an art to really build meaningful relationships.
Yes, it is. Yes, I forgot your last question was about the skills. Um, I think, I mean, relationship building is the key to everything that we do in our department. Like, we have to build, of course, the external relationships with our clients, but another piece of it is the internal relationships, because we're asking other departments every day, hey, I need this for my client, or my client needs um, artwork done, or my client needs a post on social media. So all we do is ask and ask for other stuff, but the way to get that done is to build relationships internally too. So I think, it's hard to say here's how to work on your relationship building skills, but just, I guess I tell my staff is to build the informal relationships first, and that will make the formal relationships easier. So just asking like how their day's going, how their family, what are your plans this weekend? That goes a long way in building the relationship. And then when you actually need something, it's not constantly like, oh, here comes Margaret again asking for, some more free tickets. It's like, I actually, we're friends, so it makes it so much easier. And same with the clients, like not starting the calls or the meetings of, all right, like let's get to the agenda and talk. It's, is there anything new in your life? How are you doing? So I think that's been a big piece of it and learning from you.
That's powerful, especially because I think it's taken away from the thought of just it being transactional, right?
For
It's how do
sure.
you
Yes.
invest in that? Very cool. All right. So looking at your career so far, what has been that favorite project? You're like, yeah, this is something that completely is seal approval. I will tell the world about it.
um, I don't know if the world would care, I guess is where I was thinking, but I guess it was my third or fourth year. I was still on the activation team. So I wasn't in management, I was an individual contributor. And I kind of looked at our department as a whole and thought, what are we missing? I kept seeing other teams doing this big summit for partners where they would it would be like a day long event, and they would bring in speakers and they would have, you know, strategy sessions. And it was an event for partners, almost always called a summit for some reason. And um, I felt like we were missing that piece. Like we had never done something at the Spurs for our clients like that. And so I was determined, like, this is going to be my big thing. It took way longer than I ever thought it would. I think like a year, maybe. I had to convince my boss. I had to convince my boss's boss. I had to convince leadership. Like again, it goes back to the relationships. But once I spent so much time with the buy-in and giving the how and here's why we need it, I got them all bought in. And so then I actually got to put on this day-long summit, and it was a huge success. Partners had great feedback, and we had some really powerful speakers. And now we still do an event like that every year. So I think that was, that's something I look back and I'm like, that was really cool. I just, came up with this idea and convinced people to do it. So proud of that.
That's awesome because I'm sure you've gotten some great feedback to even improve operations later, right?
For sure.
Great. All right. It looks like we have a question actually from Danielle. She's asking, how large is the activations team and what would you recommend to someone who wanted to work on your team?
Um, our team is about 20 to 25 at any given time. And again, that includes the full three pillars, but activation is, we have 10 people on our team right now. Um, I would say that's on the larger end across the NBA. Most are probably 6 to 12, but we also have multiple franchises. So we have SAFC, we have the Austin group, we have concerts, which is why ours is a little bit bigger. And then advice for somebody that wanted to work in activation. Was that the other part of the question?
Yes.
I don't know if I'll cover that. You want me to go into like advice now, or
Go for it.
okay. I think anybody who's looking to work in either sports in general or activation, there's a few key things I tell people. One is start reaching out now. Like that's something, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't, it's there's no negative. Like you might get ignored or you might get told no, but that's not really a negative in the long run. And that's the worst that could happen. So start finding connections now to reach out to and start building those relationships, because you never know when those will come back and end up in something really great for you. And then I think another thing is you can start working on those skills now, like relationship skills. You can, practice networking, which I'm sure, or it seems like you'll have a really great department there to help with that, but networking and relationship building skills. And then one that I've been telling, I've had a few students actually over the last 6 or 7 months reach out um, for an informational interview and asking advice. And one of the things I've told them right now during COVID, there are so many virtual educational opportunities that are free right now. I'm like, every day I'm like, a new one, a new one. And I'm totally trying to watch too many at a time. But like almost every summit that should have been in person this year, they've taken online. And I would say 80% of them are free. So start watching those and absorbing all the information and learning that you can. And I'm happy to send y'all a list of ones that I've found helpful or ones that I know are coming up. because I think like learning everything you can about the industry and about um, marketing right now will help you in your job search.
Nice. Yeah, I completely echo. I think this time, even though it's been a challenge, it's also been a really unique opportunity for having a wider access to professional development
Yes.
and just learning tools.
Yes, it's almost overwhelming how many there are, but I don't think you can go wrong with which ones you're finding either.
Okay, so we talked about a win in your career, which FY, that is a phenomenal win. I think it's actually really smart the fact that you found something that was working for another organization. You're like, how can we replicate that to really fit into ours? Gold. Very, very good stuff.
Thank you.
I want to know though, what has been a challenge in your career? What was that learning moment that you're like, okay, how can I get past this? And what did you do to move forward from it?
Um, I, I think the biggest challenge that I faced in my career was it was right around the same time that I put on this summit, and I was also like taking on some more responsibilities, and I was feeling like an all star in my job role right then. And I was having conversations with my boss about maybe making about like creating a new job for me, maybe more in management. Well, the time our fiscal year is July to June. So the time for promotions came up at the end of the year. And she was like, unfortunately, I totally expected a promotion. And she was like, unfortunately, like we've already hit our budget for the promotions for this year. Like you're doing a great job, but it's not going to happen this year. And that was kind of like devastating. I was like, I'm killing it at my job. I'm so great. And that kind of forced me to take a step back. And it took me a long time to be able to look back at that. But um, I remember at the time she was like, you're either going to grow from this or this is going to be like the end of your job. Um, and I think that year was really tough for me because I was kind of like, well, I'm not as valuable as I thought I was here, but that's not what it was. And looking back, it forced me to find other ways to be valuable to the organization. And so immediately I took on like, okay, what else are we missing? Like, how else can I prove that I'm a valuable team member? And, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. So that was a hard time, but I think it definitely helped me grow in the long run.
So first up, right with you talking about how you were advocating and you recognized your talent. Speaking that I'm sure was a challenge at first, but that's awesome. And then I think your reaction to it, again, it's really easy to be like, okay, I'm disengaged now. How dare they, right?
Oh, and that was me for a few months for sure.
But actually picking yourself back up, that resiliency, right? You're like, okay, so what is the need that we have? Do you still kind of keep that same mentality?
I do. I try to. But especially now, I mean, the whole sports industry is kind of up in question and facing a really hard time. And so especially now I'm trying to be like, what can I be doing? Even if I've, done everything on my to-do list and I've done the things I'm supposed to do, what else can I be doing to make myself valuable to the organization? And I think that's something important to remember no matter what your job is you can always be growing and getting better, even if it's not um, on paper. Like I'll have some people sometimes ask me like, well, what's the next steps for me? And my advice is make your steps, like show. I think it's so much more valuable for you to show what your next steps are. Like, here's where I see I could give back to the organization. Here's where I see I could be helpful. Like I've learned these marketing skills, so I think I could work on marketing here. So I think that was a long-winded answer to your question of making yourself valuable to an organization.
Oh no, I think it's phenomenal. Again, it's really showing accountability for your journey and kind of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, which is it's a scary thing to do. So
It is.
applaud you completely. You kind of touched a little bit on our next question, which I'm curious. Again, the elephant in the room is COVID, and again, sports it really has changed. Again, the NBA bubble was a thing. I want to know, how has your team really adjusted to this to still make sure business operations are moving forward? And then individually, what have you done to kind of maybe pivot a little bit?
Um, our department is I mean, it varied so much by department. for sure when we went virtual and didn't know what was going to happen. Luckily, sponsorship is one thing that we're always going to have in sports, even if we don't have fans, even if we don't have any people in the building. Like, we can still have companies advertise with us over TV, over digital. So that in that sense, we've stayed as busy as ever throughout this whole thing, and it's been kind of fun because we're constantly finding new ways to for companies to advertise. And okay, you had this in arena promotion, so now what can we change it to? um, so maybe getting more innovative is how the team has pivoted. I wasn't sure if you meant like in the job sense or working from home in that sense.
Actually, both, because this
Okay.
is also something not only, again, how your daily functions have changed, but also how are you kind of balancing that work from home life?
So the personal side of it is I just had a baby in July, and I have a 2.5 year old. Um, and so when everything went virtual in March, it was rough with a 2.5 year old, and I was 6 months pregnant. And then I also was still trying to do all of this job, but luckily daycare opened back up. So they're both in daycare right now. But finding that balance has been, it was hard to get to a balance, but now that I found it, I'm really enjoying the working from home and the schedule we have. So I leave, I stop working every day at 3:30 um, to go pick up the kids from daycare. So I am with them 100% from 4 o'clock to when they go to bed at 7. And that's like my family time. My staff knows it. My team knows it. Like, y'all can email me, but I'm not going to get back to you. And then once they go to bed, I'll kind of finish my work day. And I'll start answering emails that late. And everybody knows, like, you don't have to get back to me then, but that is my quiet working time. And so having a staff and a team and a company that's okay with different people having different schedules has been so amazing and key to everybody being successful working from home and working virtually.
And I think it's just one of those that it's also, again, been a really cool opportunity to kind of learn new skills in this one. I think jobs that we didn't know could go remote and work in a virtual space are thriving right now.
Yeah.
Um, Innovation, right? Again, it's scary at first, but if you test it out. So I'm also curious, what are some of the goals that you've kind of set for yourself within the next 5 years? Because you really have alluded to saying, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly growing. What's yours looking like?
It's a great question. I don't know if I've thought about it recently just because it's been so busy and week by week, and what's it going to look like next week and next season. Um, I think figuring out this next season has been a big focus. For me personally, I kind of have learned our CRM system and taken on more of a role in that. And so I've been managing that system, which was not part of my job when I started at all, nor was it ever like assigned to me. But I think it was at one point when I had some downtime and I was like, we could be using this better. Like, I'm going to dive in and try and figure it out. And so now that I've actually learned it, I've really enjoyed it. So there's some projects within that CRM system that I really want to see to fruition. I think we could do a better job at like tracking the fulfillment of our sponsorships and actually setting up dashboards that show us like, okay, this contract is 50% fulfilled, or this one is 0%, so we need to get moving on this one. So it probably sounds boring, but some boring CRM projects I think is the next challenge I want to tackle.
Analytics have to have a play in this
We
too.
do.
Now, again, even when you were saying, I started looking at CRM, started training, again, that taking initiative, I think that's something that is really screaming out so much in so many things that you've done and your wins. And that's actually something that a lot of employers on a national scale are looking for. So students learn that. I think it's something that's really helpful. So speaking of softwares and CRM, Danielle actually has a question. Are there any other types of softwares that you predominantly are using?
Core is our CRM software. We just switched to that one, and that's used for tickets too. I say we, but I'm not very good at it. The rest of our team is way better at Photoshop. They are phenomenal at Photoshop, and most of them had to teach themselves how to use it too. Um, I would say, I mean, mostly those two. And then Digideck is a software that we use for proposals, and it's like an online platform, and so you can like edit it in real time and send it to the clients and add videos. So again, I'm not, maybe that'll be one of my next challenges too, is to get better at Photoshop and Digideck, but I think those are the three main ones we use.
There's some great YouTube tutorials on Photoshop, FY. That was my COVID period.
Oh, nice, nice. See,
Yeah,
there's all kinds of resources. You just have to take the time to dedicate to learning them.
absolutely. Um, so I'm curious, if we go back in time, so say that freshman year, right? You were still learning kind of what it was to be a college student. What advice would you have for undergrad you? Like, what's something you wish you knew before you got out?
Um, I I think I wish I knew about like more volunteer opportunities. I knew there was internships, but internships are hard because I don't know if this is still true, but a lot of internship opportunities when I was in college were unpaid, and I still needed a job to bring in money. So it was like, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on internships because of that reason. I feel like they're kind of skewed towards people who can afford to have an unpaid internship. However, that being said, I wish I had volunteered more, because volunteering, it can be short term, it costs nothing, it's not, it can be done on your own schedule. And so, and same with shadowing too. Shadowing and volunteering, I wish I had known about, like reaching out I wish I had, reached out to the UT athletics department and said, like, do y'all need volunteers for game day, or can I shadow one of your sponsorship staff? And that costs nothing to the organization. And I think it could help both sides, and it's free. So I think that would be my advice to my freshman self.
So internships, they have really evolved. The Department of Labor
Okay,
really has
good.
been more protecting students where they're really promoting the paid opportunities. Also, though, just FYI, students, in case you ever are doing an academic-based internship that is maybe underpaid, meaning under minimum wage, or it's unpaid, we actually have something called the internship grant here at the center that you can actually apply for funding for it.
That
And
is awesome.
yeah, it's a huge help because, of course, nonprofits, I think, are probably the biggest one that maybe if they don't necessarily have the same budget as a corporation, it's a little bit of a challenge. So we do offer that also within our center. And then I love that you mentioned volunteerism because, again, it is something that you can also get experience with different types of agencies really quickly, even working with different types of populations. So maybe if you have an interest in social work, you can work with different groups within, like, say, the nonprofit sector. I'm actually one, that's how I found my career path, was through volunteerism. You can
Yeah,
actually search for volunteer opportunities through a system called Give Pulse that we actually have access to here at the university. So if you ever need that, take advantage of it. So, Margaret, okay, so Spurs, what is something that we don't know about the culture that you're like, this is actually really great?
well, that's hard because I don't know what y'all know about the culture, but the culture is my favorite thing there, and it's why I've stayed for as long as I have. I think the emphasis they put on staff development is unmatched in a lot of places. I mean, of course, we have the fun stuff. We do corporate cup where we compete and we have parties throughout the year, and um, that's all great, and I love that, and it promotes, team bonding and relationships. But the part that I really appreciate is the emphasis on staff development. So we have individual development plans, and everybody in the company has to set their own goals and review them with their manager periodically throughout the year, and then they're graded on them at the very end of the year. But it keeps you accountable, and the coolest part is that you're setting your own goals. So you're accountable to something that you set at the beginning of the year. And while we do have to set goals according to our job descriptions, you can also, once you've completed those, or you're on a good path to meeting those goals, you can set goals that are stretch goals. So I want to learn CRM, or I want to learn Photoshop. And I think that's a great way to keep you accountable to growing and developing in your career. The job I currently, like my role in the department, is kind of one that was made up from my individual development plan. And there's just all kinds of resources. We have a SS&E university, so we have classes on other departments, and we bring in outside speakers, and so through that, I've learned a lot. Um, but yeah, I think between those two things and the staff development, it's pretty unmatched.
That's awesome. I didn't know that they had like a whole university kind of set up in there just to kind of educate their own team.
Yes, it's very cool.
That is. No, I kind of want to also address that there's sometimes in our career where something doesn't work out, right? So sometimes we're like, you know what? I completely fell on my face. I wish I knew better. I didn't forecast that, right? What has been like a moment for you for that? And how did you kind of pick yourself up from that? Because I think that's also one that maybe we can't find an alternative, perhaps.
I'm sure I could think of a bigger one, but the first one that comes to mind is, um, along with the summit, I've also been planning some other events and ideas for our partners in terms of hospitality. And so I like to throw ideas out all the time of like, maybe we could do this for partners. We did a holiday party last year where we rented or yeah, rented out like one of the big party suites in the arena for a Rampage game and invited partners and their families. And we had Santa and cookies. And I love Christmas. So I thought it was going to be the coolest thing ever. And we had like 5 people show up. And so I guess like that you could say that was definitely a failure. But I mean, we've had a big emphasis in our company over the last year or two on not looking at it as a failure, but looking at it as an opportunity. So luckily I had that, that background to fall back on. But the next day we met and we were like, okay, what could we have done differently? What did we learn from this for our next one? And so luckily it had been like pretty ingrained in my brain. Like it's not a failure. It's okay if it doesn't go right. And so we could kind of pick up quickly from there. But I think it's important, like it's so important for your leadership and the company leadership to have that view, because if not, it can be scary to have a party that nobody showed up to, or a decision that was made that wasn't the right decision. But as long as you have the buy-in, you can definitely learn from it.
And that happens in any career. We really want to emphasize that to students that again, there are going to be, hiccups every so often where again that project may not have turned out the way you thought. But again, how do you pick yourself back up and kind of reassess again, even like the next day, kind of debriefing, how can we make this better? That is such a powerful thing, and not forgetting to use that mindset continuing on. All right, so students, I do want to again let you know if you have any questions throughout the session, feel free. Go ahead and enter it into the chat. So, Margaret, are you going to stay in, like, say, this kind of career path for a while? Is this the one that you're thinking of in terms of future?
I think so. I mean, I didn't think so when I started. It's interesting to see because I'm the only person I know, both my high school friends, my college friends, that has been with the same job from when I graduated college. So I know it's way more common to um, kind of go to different jobs and grow your career path that way, which I'm not saying is a negative thing. Like as long as you're growing, I think you can't go wrong. Luckily, I found a company where I was able to grow within that company. So as long as I can keep growing and as long as I am enjoying the work and being challenged, then yeah, I would love to stay here.
Yeah, that company culture, I think, is such a factor in so many conversations. I think a lot more organizations are paying attention to that because the roles are so different. And again, you want to feel valued by the company you're with. I mean, the fact that you speak very highly of Spurs Sport and Entertainment, that speaks to what they've really worked on in terms as an organization. All right, it looks like we do not have any further questions. So I just want to thank you for your time today. I learned a lot from your path. And I think just the fact that you really did demonstrate on how taking charge of your career is so important. Again, kind of assessing what you need to grow on and actually take forward with that. Kudos to you all the way. I think it's so exciting, and congratulations on the little one.
Well, thank you.
I
Well,
know
thank
you
you so
will
much for
want
having me. This was a really cool opportunity. So, and y'all seem to have a really awesome department because I mean, they offer payment for internships. So I think that is so cool.
Great. All right, so let me go ahead and do our closing out housekeeping. Okay, so students, just a reminder, you have 72 hours to mark your attendance for this session. So if you watched it on Facebook Live and such, you can go ahead and mark it in Jag Sync. Also, just a reminder that we will be wrapping up our Workforce Wednesday series for the fall in a couple weeks. We are taking a break next week for Thanksgiving. We will miss y'all, but we're really excited to come back on December 2nd. We will actually be hosting Joanna Ledesma, who is Vice President of Accounting for United Way. She's going to be talking about her journey from a BBA in accounting all the way now to a VP in nonprofit for a huge organization in our area. So really excited to kind of get her insight on that. And then if you have any questions throughout this whole process, we've recognized this is a really odd year for so many, where you're like, well, I have a question now, what can I do with this major? What are my options? What skills can I really transform and really leverage into a career path? We are here to help you through that process. If you have questions about your resume, how to handle an interview, especially again in this online format, it is something that needs some practice. So we want to help you. Our team is still working remotely that we can go ahead and set up appointments for you. Again, if you just want to shoot us a quick email, give a call, feel free to do so. Also, don't forget to check out our social media accounts. We have been very strategic during this time to make sure that we highlight all the wonderful work we're doing here at the center, and then also the wonderful work that our community partners are doing here in the San Antonio region. So you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel. So make sure to check that out. All right, everyone. So thank you again for attending and for a wonderful conversation. It was so appreciated, and have a wonderful day.